Welcome to our study of, well, actually at this point we're studying Sacred Outlook, the practice of Vajrayana, but this is actually, as I'm sort of going through it, I'm rather rejoicing in how this encapsulates and really, I think, further clarifies the entire work that we've studied earlier, the journey without goal. So I'm very happy to present this. Actually, last time I forgot to go back to what we actually have been doing up till this point, which is going through this devotional liturgy from Jakob Rinpoche, which is invoking the masters of the lineage. You could say our pedigree, the outer manifestations of our awakened nature as they have sort of displayed down through the history of the Buddhist teaching. So in this way, there's this sense of belonging with regards to all the different Buddhist traditions. And of course, particularly here, we're referring to the lineages that we had in Tibet. And together with that, then having invoked them, then we have this liturgy that follows, which really enumerates and clarifies what it is that we want, so that as we go about our life, and particularly this is chanted first thing in the morning, that we really identify what are our priorities. So this practice of calling the Guru really precedes all the various practices that we do. This precedes whenever we do Nundro, it precedes whatever sadhana practice we might do. And there are different practices. In Tibetan, they're called Lama Gyangbu, which means calling the Guru from afar, literally. But then again, it does actually come with this understanding that the Guru actually doesn't abide anywhere else except within the mind of the one who's calling. And yet, taking this duality as a vehicle, then I wouldn't say tongue-in-cheek, but with an understanding that we're operating within the illusory phenomenon of the teacher as external, then we are invoking them and supplicating them that we might break through our ordinary density and our ordinary confusion and really see clearly what it is that we want to do. So here we've, in the liturgy that then follows the actual invocation of the lineage masters, we then come to this particular verse here, where we highlight really the foundations of the path. So it says, I've taken refuge, aroused bodhicitta and made supplications, but devotion and compassion are not born in the depths of my heart. I give lip service to dharmic action and spiritual practice, but they become routine and are not touched by them. Guru, think of me. Look upon me quickly with compassion. Grant your blessings so that I may be one with the Dharma. So we've done what we're supposed to as good Buddhist men and women. We've done all the right things, and yet at the end of the day, we're jaded and practices become routine and we're not touched by them. And this very often in the modern world, we would then say, well, there's something wrong with the people out there. There's something wrong with the lineage. There's something wrong with the practices and so on. But it's really just us who are reluctant to go beyond our ordinary ways of going about things. We are unimaginative. We're rigid. We're essentially not willing to really give ourselves. We still are like consumers that would want something for our buck. And so we're just waiting for it to be handed over. It's like we've done our duty, and now things are supposed to come to us. And it just doesn't work like this, because the one that's asking and the one that's demanding is the very cause of our suffering. So if things were to be handed to us as if they could, then it would really just feed the habitual patterns that entrench us in suffering. So this is where we actually need to look at the one who is engaging in this process. We cannot look at the others. We cannot look at the gurus, the clergy, the people, the teaching, all of these, and point our fingers to them and say, hey, it's not working. We need to be aware, and like I said earlier, so much of what we're doing on the path is acknowledging our own confusion. And in fact, the more we acknowledge our own confusion, the more we actually are free of our confusion. But it does come with this practice of honesty. And here we are exposing how that we, as much as we might externally mimic the path, this actually doesn't touch us, we're not allowing this to touch us deeply. So we supplicate the Guru, that the Guru, with the Guru's compassion, in that the Guru has all the qualities and displays all the qualities of kindness and caring, and also that the Guru abiding within is something that can be reached. So that's where we supplicate the Guru, supplicating that the Guru might grant his blessings, that she might grant her blessings, that I may be one with the Dharma, that the Dharma, we understand that the Dharma is not something external to ourselves. We're not incorporating something new. We're being true to what is. And then Jakob also writes, all suffering comes from desiring happiness for oneself. Although it is said that Buddhahood is attained by considering the welfare of others, I arouse supreme bodhicitta, but secretly cherish selfishness. Not only do I not benefit others, I casually cause them harm. Guru, think of me, look upon me quickly with compassion, grant your blessings so that I exchange myself for others. So again, we're not down on ourselves, but we're down on that which limits ourselves. We're down on that which is going to get in the way. And that is our self-centering. And so we can see effectively, if we look around us in the world, how there's happiness when people are concerned with the welfare of others. So we supplicate, we arouse, we say, I arouse bodhicitta, supreme bodhicitta, but secretly cherish selfishness. So we go about the mimicking the liturgies and so on that espouse bodhicitta, but then secretly we remain without really changing much. And that's where then we have to acknowledge that we're not really doing much good, neither for ourselves nor for others, and perhaps even we're habitually happen to be causing harm to others. So we supplicate the teacher that we may exchange, that I exchange myself for others, that I may actually put myself in the shoes of others. So there was something very sweet. Somebody sent me something yesterday. We came actually from Rinpoche. I think he got it from somewhere else, but it's a little experiment that was done in a classroom where all the children were told to write their names on a balloon and then put all the balloons outside in the hallway. And then they were given 5 minutes to find the balloon with their name on it. And the kids ran around, but actually none of them managed to find their own balloon. Then they were told to simply just find the first balloon they could put their hands on and give it to the person whose name was on it. And in no time, everybody had their own balloon. There you go. Very sweet. Anyway, this kind of thing. The logic is not that far away, and yet we have to acknowledge that this is something we should be working on. So, okay. So in this article, this essay, which is about essentially Vajrayana, and which will be to a large extent about the Vajrayana shrine, That's what initially this was about. Trungpa Rinpoche makes this extremely important point, how what we're doing with the Vajrayana practice, as we do with any deity practice in the Vajrayana, is completely founded on the universal project of Buddhism, which is connecting with our basic goodness. And as such, then, Vajrayana, embodying our basic goodness, is the practice, it's the same practice that we're pursuing in all the different Buddhist vehicles. And Trungpa Rinpoche makes a point how it's really important that we don't get tripped up on the apparent exotic nature of the Vajrayana, but really understand how it's founded on the foundations, the universal foundations of Buddhism, such as understanding the Four Noble Truths and also going through the discipline of the path, establishing calm, establishing insight, establishing an understanding of non-theism, the lack of anything that we can conceptually objectify, both in terms of the phenomenal world and ourselves, and also through this begin to be directly connected to the vast possibility that exists within ourselves. Understanding this phenomenon that we could call shunyata, the lack of inherent existence in phenomena, emptiness so-called, we open up to a greater intelligence, we open up to a greater insight. And it's also there that we discover this untainted and uncompromised, unconditional, basic disposition that we call Buddha nature or Vajra nature. And it's particularly through devotion to a living embodiment of enlightenment, our teacher. It's through the openness and the willingness to experience the mind and the being of our teacher that we then have a direct we begin to have a direct experience of this basic condition of clarity, not just as something that exists in the far distance of the path, but something that exists in the immediate reality. And so with that proximity of enlightenment, then we practice what is known. We're then at the doorstep, really, of the Vajrayana approach, of the practice of Vajrayana, of the practice of the resultant vehicle, the Vajrayana, and that's where we practice the preliminary practices, the so-called mundu, the tantric preliminary practices. And within the tantric preliminary practices, we really go through all the foundation, the essential foundations, not just of the Vajrayana, but we cover really all the foundations of the general Buddhist path. So presently we've covered refuge and what's called mantra, and now we're looking at the practice of mandala. So Trungpa Rinpoche says, in mandala practice, one gives oneself and one's world as an offering to the lineage. The student offers 108,000 mandalas made from heaps of saffron-scented rice, mixed with jewels and other precious substances. While constructing the mandala, one visualizes the world and everything in it, all its wealth and beauty, and one's myriad sense perception as an offering to the gurus and Buddhas who are visualized before one. The practitioner's sense of pure being should also be included in the offering and given up. This is called giving up the giver. When one gives up so completely, there is no one left to watch what is being given, and no one to appreciate how generous one is being. The more one surrenders in this way, the more richness one develops. There is never a problem of running out of things to offer. One's human life is in itself an immensely rich situation to offer to the lineage. So the practice of mandala is where we establish this abiding innate condition of wealth that is natural to us, and yet having been accustomed to duality, where we think of ourselves as separate from the phenomena and the phenomenal world, then we operate with this dualistic poverty of thinking, I and my possessions. And that's where the practice of mandala, it constitutes the practice of generating an increasing sense of relative wealth, and also as a result of that, relative wealth manifests within the scope of our phenomenal world. And also ultimately this enables us to, as Trungpa is describing here, go beyond the duality of giver and giving. So this is a practice that ultimately enables us to abandon this normal concern we have for our resources, and also provides all the relative conditions for an actual experience of such wealth. So we would say mandala offering, it brings about all the necessary relative conditions for our practice. Then Trungpa says, having completed the mandala offerings, one then practices Guru Yoga, which is like actually meeting the Guru face to face for the first time. Guru Yoga is the first opportunity to receive the adhisthana, or blessings, of the Guru's wisdom. So the Guru Yoga is very often defined as the practice of blessings, or bringing blessings onto the path. It's at this place where we have the openness to trust in the teacher, and without objectifying or creating an artificial distance between ourselves and the teacher, some sort of hierarchical positioning, there is an acknowledgement of the teacher's immensity and the teacher's immense liberation. With the blessings, this is the place where we then begin to meet and mingle with the teacher. There's the experience that this condition exists within ourselves. But this is not something that's uniquely understood intellectually. It's understood on the basis of this openness and this devotion, where something beyond the ordinary rational mind can penetrate. And this is where we, abandoning this ordinary jaded condition of being closed and exclusively looking out for ourselves, that we, through this openness to the teacher, we receive this quality of adhisthana, or blessings. The Guru's wisdom begins to become our own. So it's recognized as innate to us. So this is where we can speak about Guru Yoga, this mingling with the teacher's wisdom. Trungpa says, in Guru Yoga, the practitioner begins to realize the non-dual nature of devotion. There is no separation between the lineage and oneself. And in fact, the Vajra being of the Guru is a reflection of one's own innate nature. In this way, the practice of Mudra, culminating in Guru Yoga, helps to overcome theistic notions about the teacher or about the Vajrayana itself. One realizes that the lineage is not an entity outside of oneself. One is not worshipping the teacher or his ancestors as gods. Rather, one is connecting with Vajra sanity, which is so powerful because of its non-existence, its utter egolessness. So the beauty and the skill lies in this, that we are connecting with the Dharma of realization. While we have all the Dharma of transmission, all the theory, what one has heard, then here we are engaging with actual direct experience. And so there's no longer any kind of theorizing or putting enlightenment off into the future, but it's very much there as a provocative presence in the form of the teacher. And the teacher exists entirely as the reflection of this Vajra sanity. So this is not something that's constructed. This is the very nature of the absence of our confusion, egolessness. Sacred outlook. Trungpa says, when we begin to mix our minds with the energy of the lineage, we're not doing so in order to protect ourselves from the world. In fact, devotion brings us closer to our experience, to our world. As a result of the practice of Mudra, we feel a greater sense of warmth and gentleness in ourselves. Because of that, we can relax and take a fresh look at the phenomenal world. We find that life can be an easy, natural process because there's no need to struggle. We start to experience goodness everywhere. We experience a tremendous sense of freedom and sacredness in everything. Now, very often we have this, and Rinpoche Rinpoche very often identifies how we, in conventional sense, we have this notion of no pain, no gain. But the Vajrayana and the proposition that we're making here is actually painlessly, if we're just willing to be open and be sensitive to the quality of the teacher, that enlightenment exists within the world, the enlightenment exists within our teacher in the lineage and so forth. We're not necessarily bound to be endlessly struggling. We might be somewhat addicted, habituated, and generally rather unimaginatively married to our practice of groaning and moaning over our life, and in that way we might not really believe that anything else is possible. And for that reason, of course, also the Buddha did construct a path. But at the same time, the paradox of this path is that where we're heading, as the title in the book we've been studying, Journey Without Goal, the goal of this journey is actually present already spontaneously. And the teacher embodies this. We might think of enlightenment as something mystical and far away, but in fact, enlightenment walks and talks in the embodiment of our teacher. And being open to the teacher and being willing to mingle with the energy of the teacher, of the lineage, then there's a discovery of goodness within ourselves and goodness within the world that we might not have imagined. But then again, this is something that is accessed not through imagination, but through actual practice, actual experience. So this is where we're proposing this actual, not just dreamy vision or this sort of wishful thinking or some hope that there might be something good out there. We're experiencing that this sacred quality of our reality is already spontaneously there. Trungpa just says, when we experience this self-existing sacredness, we realize that the only way to abide continually in this state of freedom is to enter completely into the Guru's world, because such freedom is the blessing of the Guru. It was the Guru who presented the practice that led to the experience of freedom, and it is the Guru who manifests the epitome of this freedom. In fact, we begin to see that the self-existing sacredness of the world is simultaneously an expression of the Guru. This experience is known as sacred outlook, or Tanang in Tibetan, or in Dharma language. Tanang literally means pure perception. The idea of purity here refers to an absence of imprisonment. Sacred outlook means perceiving the world and oneself as intrinsically good and unconditionally free. So on the basis of our sensitivity to the teacher, we discover something that's innate to ourselves, innate to the phenomenal world. And it's not just a nice idea, but we actually have a teacher that embodies this, who manifests this epitome of freedom. And discovering this sacred dimension is what we call then sacred outlook. So it's seeing the sacred nature present within ourselves, present within the world. So this is not something that we're adding to the world. This is when we begin to see the world more accurately, when we begin to part with flawed assumptions, flawed science, flawed beliefs and habitual patterns that prevent us from seeing reality as it is. When we part from that and we are introduced to this, the quality of the teacher's wisdom, the quality that abides within ourselves, that externally manifests as the teacher and the phenomenal world, then we have this faith and this trust and this discovery that the sacred nature, or rather the nature of the world and ourselves, is unconditionally, from the very origin, is pure, is sacred. So looking a bit more into the details around this, then this plays out within the wide variety of how the phenomenal world manifests. And this is where we look at the 5 Buddha families. So it's not that we have just one particular, you could say, dimension to our reality. It's infinite. And we talk about the primordial Buddha, the Dharmakaya, we talk about the 5 Buddha families, and yet also within these 5 Buddha families, we talk about the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, and we also talk about the infinite purity of appearance and existence. So how, regardless of how we might have constructed our own private samsaric Idahos, then reality is there unconditionally without the tainted projections that through which we see the world. So sacred outlook means beginning to see the world exactly for what it is. So with that inspiration and through the practice of Guru Yoga and through the discovering this perspective, this what we also sometimes call pure perception of sacred outlook, same thing. But in here we then, as Trungpa says, having developed sacred outlook, it is possible to take a further step into the Vajra world. When we experience the self-existing sacredness of reality, the Vajrayana iconography begins to make sense. It makes sense to picture the world as a sacred realm, as a mandala of enlightened mind. From the viewpoint of sacred outlook, the phenomenal world is seen in terms of 5 styles of energy: Buddha, Vajra, Padma, Ratna, and Karma. Oneself and the people one meets, the seasons, the elements, all aspects of the phenomenal world are made up of one or more of these styles, or Buddha families. In Tantric iconography, the Buddha families make up a mandala with Buddha in the center and Vajra, Ratna, Padma, and Karma at the 4 cardinal points. So the present map that we're then going to be exploring is really the dimensions of enlightenment as it plays out in the various aspects of our phenomenal world. Trungpa says one or more of the Buddha families can be used to describe a person's intrinsic perspective or stance in the world. Each Buddha family principle can have either a neurotic or an enlightened expression. The particular neurosis associated with a Buddha family is transmuted into its wisdom or enlightened form by the taming process to its wisdom, or probably onto its wisdom or enlightened form by the taming process of shamatha vipassana meditation, by training in compassion in the Mahayana, and particularly by the development of sacred outlook in the Vajrayana. In their enlightened expression, the Buddha families are manifestations of Vajra freedom. So with the Buddha families, we're simply talking about the various aspects of Buddha nature, the object of the path. And so this is something that we're approaching right from the start, in the form of making our mind workable, pliable, we could say taming it through shamatha vipassana meditation, sitting practice, and then also expanding our normal psychology, which normally operates on the basis of seeing ourselves as the center of the universe. When we expand this ordinary mind from thinking in terms of ourself to really be concerned about others, then through this practice of Lojong, also we are connecting with the natural dimension of Buddha nature. And particularly here then, in the practice of sacred outlook, then there is this non-dual appreciation of the phenomena that we engage with. all what we call appearances. They're seen as inseparable from the ground of purity. And so we would see the entire world in terms of this purity, that phenomena never extend beyond the realm of their primordial nature, which is without confusion, without our confused projections, we could say, which are then, hence, they are primordially pure, primordially enlightened. So Trungpa Rinpoche says the basic quality of Buddha energy is spaciousness. The confused manifestation of this spacious quality is ignorance, which in this case involves avoiding vivid or unpleasant experience. When Buddha energy is transmuted, it becomes the wisdom of all-encompassing space. Buddha is associated with the color white and is symbolized by a wheel, which represents this all-encompassing open nature. So now we're looking at the so-called five families. And like Trungpa Rinpoche says, at the center, mind you, this can change sometimes depending on the particular practice or the particular approach we're taking. But here then, in general, we would say Buddha family is at the center. And this Buddha energy has the two aspects. On one hand, it is the sort of the ignorant, phlegmatic aspect that sort of retreats, and the other one is then the accommodating quality of that when the narrowness of this spacious quality is abandoned, it is the quality that allows for all phenomena, that is the wisdom of all-encompassing space. Next is the Vajra family, which is in the east of the mandala. And probably many know, then when we talk about east and south and west and north, we identify this as, well, let's see what they say here. But let's see if there's, in the traditional, east is at the bottom, south is to the left, west is at the top, and north is to the right. Yeah, they say it much simpler than I would have said it. So let's stick with that explanation. But remember, you're sitting as the center of the deity, you're sitting in the center, and so east is in front of you, but that is also then at the bottom. So that's represented by the color blue. The symbol of Vajra is the Vajra scepter, or dorje, whose 5 prongs pierce the neurosis of ego mind. The Vajra scepter is like a thunderbolt, electric and powerful. Vajra energy is precise and direct. It is the ability to view situation from all possible perspectives and to accurately perceive the details of experience and the larger frameworks in which things take place. The neurotic expressions of Vajra energy are aggression and intellectual fixation. When the intellectual accuracy of Vajra is transmuted into its enlightened form, it becomes mirror-like wisdom. Vajra is associated with the element of water. Its neurotic expression, anger, is like clouded, turbulent water. Its wisdom aspect is like the clear reflection of a still pond. Now, I shan't say anything beyond that, and I would, however, like to say that you have in Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche's extremely poetic, extremely intuitive, sensitive, artistic, brilliant formulations of the qualities of the 5 families. You have in these something that you don't find anywhere else. Over many years of having attempted and a little bit sort of perusing through texts that deal with Vajrayana material, I've never seen anywhere that the 5 families are explained so beautifully as in Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings. And Trungpa Rinpoche, very much coming from the Vajrayana, the resultant vehicle, the Mahamudra, the Dzogchen perspective, is so brilliant as identifying how, you could say, at the same time that we have neurosis, we also have enlightenment. They're so close to each other. And this is, of course, runs as a theme through all of Vajrayana, but the way that Trungpa Rinpoche then expounds upon this in terms of, you could say, artistically painting a landscape of what the enlightened quality looks like and what the confused quality looks like, is unparalleled as far as I'm concerned, as far as I've seen. So I shan't add anything to this, but I would like to say that, please, if you want to understand these 5 family principles, there's no better place than in these. We have it in Journey Without Goal. You have it in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism in the last chapter. You have it also in Myth of Freedom, and presumably many places, including here, then where we have a clear presentation of how these neuroses that we, of course, all can identify with, how they at the same time also they hold, you could say, this promise or the immediate spontaneous presence of the non-confused, non-neurotic enlightened quality as being spontaneously there. So that was, we've covered then Buddha, we've covered Vajra, and then the Ratna family. In this, the Ratna family in the south, so that's, if you're looking from a mandala in the front, to the left, if you're sitting in the center of the mandala, it's to your right, but this is what we call the south direction, is represented by the color yellow. The symbol of the Ratna family is a jewel expressing richness. Ratna energy is like autumn, when fruits and grain are ripe and farmers celebrate the harvest. Ratna is associated with the element of earth, which expresses its solidity and fertility. The neurotic style of the neurotic style of Ratna is envy or hunger, wanting everything and trying to engulf everything. Its enlightened expression is the wisdom of equanimity, because Ratna accommodates all experiences and brings out their innate richness. When it is freed from hunger, Ratna becomes an expression of powerful expansiveness. Ratna. In the West is the Padma family, which is associated with the color red. The symbol of Padma is a lotus, a beautiful, delicate flower which blooms in the mud. Padma is the basic energy of passion or seduction. Its neurotic aspect is grasping or clinging, which is the confused expression of passion. When passion is freed from fixation on the object of its desire, it becomes discriminating awareness, wisdom, the appreciation of every aspect and detail of experience. Padma is associated with the element of fire. In the confused state, passion, like fire, does not distinguish among things it grasps, burns, and destroys. In its enlightened expression, the heat of passion becomes the warmth of compassion. So that was Padma. Kama, in the north of the mandala, is associated with the color green. Its symbol, a sword, represents cutting through hesitation and confusion and accomplishing one's goals accurately and thoroughly. Kama is the wisdom of all accomplishing action in its enlightened manifestation. The neurotic expression of Kama energy is resentment and excessive speed. Kama neurosis would like to create a uniform world and resents any sloppiness or inefficiency. When Kama is freed from neurosis, it becomes accurate and energetic without resentment or pettiness. Kama is associated with the element of wind, which represents this forceful and energetic quality of action. So that's the Kama. So here we've covered the 5 Buddha families: Buddha, Vajra, Ratna, Padma, and Kama. Trungpa Rinpoche says, perceiving the energies of the Buddha families in people and in situations, we see that confusion is workable and can be transformed into an expression of a sacred outlook. The student must reach this understanding before the teacher can introduce the tantric deities or yidams. Every yidam belongs to a Buddha family and its ruler of the wisdom aspect of that family. The Buddha family principles provide a link between ordinary samsaric experience and the brilliance and loftiness of the Yidam's world. By understanding the Buddha family principles, we can appreciate the tantric deities as embodiment of the energies of sacred world and identify ourselves with that sacredness. With that understanding, we can receive abhisheka or empowerment. We are ready to be introduced to Vajrayana. So while we, in the general Buddhist teaching, recognize in that all phenomena arise on the basis of causes and conditions, they don't have any solid, unchanging reality. And that means that all phenomena, whether it's our psychological experience or the outer external realm, all phenomena are workable. We're never stuck. Not only we're never stuck as a positive outlook, but it means that things, much perhaps to our dismay, they are ever changing. But we can work with these conditions. Here, more than that, we're also saying that the phenomenal world, with all its changing nature and its variety, abides intrinsically within this vision of purity, which is what we just discussed here in terms of the 5 families. So intrinsically, any given phenomenon exists within a dimension of purity, and the particular styles in which phenomena unfold, as we've just seen here in terms of descriptions of the 5 family principles, they continually, while they might in a samsaric, in terms of our particular way of perceiving things, might be reflections of confusion, we can also intuit how just as the world is workable through an understanding of emptiness and dependent arising, then through an understanding of the presence, spontaneous presence of Buddha nature, how the conditions and the experiences that we have are permeated by the presence of these 5 Buddha family principles. So we can walk into a situation that's particularly speedy and difficult and competitive and so on, and we can understand, there's some karma neurosis working here. And we can see that this holds a promise of possibly being something where things could be accomplished. Or we could walk into a situation that's potentially a bit sticky and very much permeated by desire and want and so forth. But we can also see that here this holds the promise of appreciation for phenomena and also sympathy with the world, compassion, etc., etc. So this is where the understanding and the perspective that Trungpa Rinpoche is describing here in terms of the 5 Buddha families, it's really, like he says, it provides a link between the ordinary samsaric experience and the brilliance and loftiness of our engagement with the sacred outlook. And we do this through the method or the means of the Yidam. Like Trungpa Rinpoche said earlier, then his favorite translation of the term Yidam is personal deity. It's the discipline that we engage with as Vajrayana practitioners that connects us to this sacred outlook, connects us to the sacred nature within ourselves, which we discover on the basis of the Guru's blessing. And also it's where we discover the purity also in the phenomenal world around us. So the Yidam is key really to Vajrayana practice. Okay, let's see if there's some questions. Does this mean that by the end of the Ngundo, one should be able to see everything sacred? Well, you know, we don't really operate with in Buddhism, we don't operate with the notion of should. There's no rules. We can create conditions. The Ngundu could create the conditions for us discovering something. But there's no should. It's not like the teacher's going to say then, say, okay, you know, oh yeah, you didn't get it. So it's not like that. We all have individual dispositions that are so different. And at the end of the day, what we want to do with the study and practice is begin to gradually approach some greater vision. So we might do this in leaps and bounds, or we might sort of do this at a snail's pace. We're all very different, and so there's no should. But at the same time, what we would want to do with the present study is see how the this dimension of sacred outlook is possible, is potentially there within our experience. It could very well be that we could engage this. We're encouraged to engage this, and here we just want to make sense of it. The Ngöndro practice is part of our practice of the path, so it's part of the journey that we make to actually experience this. While we study this and it begins to can make sense to us intuitively, logically, and so on, that's just theory. And so the actual journey goes through, like Trungpa was saying, it goes through practice of shamatha vipassana, through Lojong teachings, and all of these, they are intrinsic to the Ngöndro practice as well. Then the Ngöndro practice is a bit more specific, but at the same time, it also is really permeated and infused with the practice of sitting practice, shamatha vipassana, and Lojong practice. And on the basis of this, yes, it then builds further. Yeah, live audience.
The Yidam is the deity, is it or is it not? And how do we know which is our particular deity that we are?
Yeah, so the question is, we very often hear that to have a personal deity, then the ideal scenario would be that the teacher then says, this is your particular deity. And that might happen, but also very often it plays out really in terms of us doing particular sadhana practices. We might, within our sangha, for example, do particular practices. For example, in the Siddhartha intent sangha, we very often do Chimapama Nyingtik or Vimaladrup or various practices. And these as we're doing the practice, we should just take these as our personal deity practice and engage wholeheartedly with that. All along, the notion of personal deity really just means that the deity is seen as something that is innate to us. So we're not seeing the deity as something outside, but very much as an expression of our Buddha nature. And so,
I get confused about is the Yidam and deity.
Yeah, Yidam and deity is synonymous. Yeah. Then there's a question. Thanks to those who recorded, transcribed, and made available these teachings. Homage to the teacher. Thank you for presenting this, Jakob. Yeah, indeed. Trungpa Rinpoche's activity was so much furthered by a remarkable group of brilliant students. Right from the start, really, from works like Cutting Through, just remarkable editors, transcribers, and so on, down to the present day. We are so indebted to them. That's true. The people who compiled the collected works, the what's it called, the treasury of the ocean of Dharma, etc. Remarkable. Yes, thank you to them. Does this mean? Then there's a question. Does it mean I first identify which Buddha family is closest to my ego pattern, and then choose a Yidam to practice from that family? Well, let's see. I would say first we first establish a foundation, and then doing the Ngöndro, then eventually we'll get there. But it's not something that, it's really, presently we're just trying to understand the logic of Vajrayana, which is that we could connect with our connect our confusion with enlightenment. So we could begin to be sensitive to how the Buddha families play out, but this will come. So I would say there's no question of first identifying anything, because we actually first need to establish the ground of the Buddhist path in terms of shamatha and vipassana practice. And then working with the Ngondro, then we become more sensitized to the notion of the Buddha family. Then the issues of yidams and deity and so on becomes more clear. And also we begin to understand the universality, that all the various deities, in fact, are the same within the nature of wisdom. So first we need to establish ground, sitting practice, do yidam, what's it called, do ngondro practice, and then the yidam will become quite clear for us. So that's where presently we are really just, because in the Vajrayana the deities, the mandala, and so on, the culture around sacred outlook is so prominent. It makes a lot of sense to begin to have some understanding of what this all means. Which Buddha family is White Tara from? And what about Samantabhadra? Well, we would say that the Tara generally is associated with the Padma family. We say that the white and the green Tara arose from Avalokiteshvara's tears. But then again, sometimes green Tara is associated with the Kama family. But generally Padma. Samantabhadra is actually beyond the 5 families. So if we're talking about the primordial Buddha Samantabhadra, then this is the ground beyond the ground of the 5 families. Jakob, can you please talk a bit more about how to handle learning more the foundational understanding of Vajrayana sacred outlook and trying to keep watch of a possible growing ego? Well, I would say right now, I would encourage to just revisit the text that we've just been looking at, because this is really a place where we have an incredible summary of the foundations of the path. So in that sense, this sums up what we've looked at with Journey Without Goal, and also works such as Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, Myth of Freedom, and learning the foundational understanding of Vajrayana sacred outlook and keeping a watch of a possibly growing ego. I would like to, as I always do, repeat what Sonsikan Rinpoche says. If we're already onto the fact that we could be developing an ego as we go along the path, that's already good. There's a bit of insurance in that we probably won't be that prone to, there's not like our ego then is a blind spot. But essentially, I think we have all the material here, and I think if we engage with sitting practice, if we engage with the lojong practices, being willing to share ourselves with the world, being kind and gentle with the world, and have faith in the teacher, that we develop a relationship of trust in the teacher, and then something will happen, and we're on the right way towards the Vajrayana. But it's very difficult to engage faith in the teacher unless we actually have some peace of mind, because we'll be too disturbed really to begin to really gauge and understand the qualities of the teacher. And we might also be too disturbed to actually even consider taking a gentle look at the world. So sitting practice is so valuable. Meditation practice is indispensable all across the practice of the Buddhist world, of the Buddhist path. And this will lead us to the falling away of our ordinary nervous fixation on ourselves, and an opening up to the world, to others, and also then to the sacred dimension of reality. So then there is a question: how does the mechanism of Guru Yoga formal practice ripens in actual experience of realization in any situation that we're exposed? Well, simply because we, as Trungpa Rinpoche was also saying, we begin to appreciate, engage the experience of the lineage of the teacher. We're no longer reacting to the world in terms of how we ordinarily do it, according to our ordinary, you could say, karmic personalities, our ordinary habitual ways of doing things. We're beginning to live the teacher's experience. And what's interesting is we're not adopting a sort of an alien approach, but in fact, through the appreciation of the teacher's qualities and appreciating the teacher's wisdom and compassion and so on, there's this openness that takes place that doesn't really have anything to do with particular behavior, but it does touch something within ourselves, a dimension of wisdom. And that's where you could say adopting the teacher's mind doesn't turn us into replicas of the teacher, but it does enable us to become really present within our actual immediate reality. So the Guru Yoga, the openness to the teacher, really paves the way for us to have connection with our you could say, the ultimate teacher which abides within. And it's within this perspective then that we begin to have an experience within life and ordinary everyday experiences and situations in which we're living in a way that's not tainted by or carried away by our ordinary habitual ways. There's much more playfulness, much more warmth. But that dimension of warmth and that dimension of playfulness and essentially non-confusion, wisdom, that comes about through the practice of the path, and then particularly then the practice of Guru Yoga. Then someone asked, does the student usually practice the teacher's yidam? That happens sometimes. You know, in the Nyingma tradition, we practice a lot the Vajrayana. And that's very often done because this is mainly what most Nyingma masters practiced. In the Kagyu traditions, you have a lot of emphasis on Vajrayana and Chakra-sambhara. In the Sakya tradition, Hevajra. In the Gelug tradition, Yamantaka and Guya Samaj. So there is a little bit of this you could say, practice of adopting the yidams of the lineage masters. But again, that's not a rule. Just an admin question, where can we locate this text? I missed a few sessions of this study, so may have missed what you advised. Well, you can find it in a book called The Heart of the Buddha. And so that's a book you can get. Also, it's in volume 3 of the collected works of Chögyam Trungpa. And also, initially, you found it in a catalog. In the catalog with an exhibition that was called that's where it originally came from, which is called the Diamond Way and Silk Route, something like the Silk Route and the Diamond Way, or something like that. How do I practice Lojong? Is it by mindfulness of the 3 poison in daily life? Keep precepts, trying to have some concrete ways to do that. Isn't the entire Buddha Dharma Lojong actually? Well, I can say yes to the last question. The entire Buddha Dharma is Lojong. Yes, it's working with our mind. But then again, you do have the specific pith instructions of the Mahayana. And this is where we have pith instructions such as the way of the Bodhisattva, the 7-fold mind training, the 8 verses of mind training, etc., etc. We have particular short, to the point, in meditation instructions on how to actually engage bodhicitta within our ordinary life. So Lojong practice typically based on the understanding of absolute bodhicitta, you could say vipassana, understanding of emptiness. Then it's very much also about how to working with our actual circumstances, particularly the difficult circumstances in our lives and so on. So there's a lot of instruction in that. So we should understand it's a whole big topic in itself. but there are many teachings available on Lojong practice, and particularly we very often refer to something called the 7 points of mind training. So quite a few teachers have taught on that. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche has taught on that in a book called Enlightened Courage. Charlie Kyabgun Rinpoche in a book called Lojong. Chögyam Trungpa in a book called Training the Mind and Cultivating Loving Kindness. So I would say begin by reading up on it, and then also if you could, then receive teachings from an actual teacher on how to practice Lojong, practically speaking. Then someone says the text that we're studying is also available on the internet. Yeah, and Heart of the Buddha available in Kindle format from Amazon. Somebody else tells us. Thank you. Okay, so we'll conclude here today. Very glad that it's helpful. Thank you. Through this virtue, may all beings throughout existence awaken together without a single being left behind. In the pure realm of the luminous essence, the ground of the great perfection, may they remain inseparable from the kayas and wisdoms. Through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we're born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the holy gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together. Okay, thank you.